At night, the outer court gate rests in stone and timber, with one recessed lamp and a little cool air above the wall. Nothing here asks to be explained. The hour feels settled before the listener arrives. The gate, the threshold, and the small lamp are enough. A little warmth lingers in the wall. A little dampness stays in the stone. The night begins by already being in progress, and the mind can enter it without effort. There is no need to hurry past the first threshold. The library feels awake only in the quietest sense, as if it has been holding the same hour for some time already. The night does not open with an announcement. It opens by continuing. The listener is allowed to arrive slowly here and stay untroubled. Inside, the reading hall opens in long, quiet rows, with low tables, rolled texts, and wide spaces of shadow between the lamps. The room does not present itself. It simply remains available. Wood grain, lamp bowls, and the still surfaces of the tables hold the scene together. Nothing needs to be named all at once. The calm from the gate carries inward and becomes softer here. Even the wider room does not increase the pressure of attention. It only gives the silence a little more distance to travel across, and lets the listener settle more fully into the same unbroken night. The hall keeps offering calm in layers instead of in statements. Farther along, the shelves rise in dark vertical layers, with baskets, labels, and one warm practical light held near the middle distance. The room feels denser now, though not heavier. The eye has only a few places to rest: a shelf beam, a tied bundle, a pale label. Beyond them, darkness keeps the rest of the archive unread and undisturbed. The night continues by narrowing its focus, not by increasing pressure. Nothing in the shelves insists on being counted or fully known. The room is calmer when most of it remains half withheld. That gentler uncertainty helps the narration keep drifting instead of tightening into explanation. What is unseen here is part of the comfort, not a lack. At the copying desk, the last work of the evening has already gone still. A narrow task light remains over papyrus and wood, leaving the rest of the surface quiet around it. A reed pen, a sheet, and a small stone weight keep the scene intimate. This is not the feeling of labor in progress. It is the calmer feeling that stays after careful work has been set down for the night. The desk holds the memory of attention without asking for new effort. What remains is only the gentleness that follows use, when a surface can rest while still keeping the shape of the hands that left it. Even the pause after work feels careful and softly human. Nearby, pale sheets and cloths hang from a simple rack and hold the lamp glow in a lighter way. The air seems easier here, and the room gives itself a little more space. The cloth, the rack beam, and the dim wall behind them are enough to keep the scene breathing. Nothing moves far. The night only loosens slightly, then settles again. The easing is so small, it feels more like a softer breath than a change. In a narrow alcove, spare lamps, oil, and folded cloth wait in practical order. One active flame stays among darker shapes, warm but never bright. An oil flask, a small bowl, and the shelf edge give the eye somewhere quiet to land. The room does not ask for attention. It keeps a steady usefulness, softened by the hour. The longer one stays here, the less the objects feel like a list, and the more they feel like one held condition: readiness without strain, order without display, warmth without insistence. That steadiness lets the voice remain low and nearly weightless. Beyond that, the corridor linking the rooms remains long, repetitive, and patient. A distant, practical light leaves shadow bands across the floor and lets the rest of the passage stay low and even. The corridor works because it does not rush the listener forward. A lintel, a mat, and one dim niche are enough. The night glides here rather than advances. Even the transition between rooms does not feel like a reset. It feels like the same breath moving through a different shape, carrying the same quiet state a little farther down the passage. Nothing in the corridor needs to announce where the next room begins. The map table waits under a small lamp, with folded surfaces, soft edges, and weight stones resting where hands left them. The scene is broader again, but the voice does not need to widen with effort. The table, the cloth cover, and one pale reflected plane keep the moment open without making it active. Calm continues here as shape and distance, not as information. The wider surface encourages the mind to rest without searching for more. At the repair bench, bindings and torn papyrus, lie in a neat pause beneath a low task light. The materials feel handled, then gently left alone. Thread, paper, fiber, and the wood of the bench bring the scene close again. This is one of the quieter rooms in the episode, and it helps the mind drift by staying exact without becoming busy. There's comfort in how little the bench asks to be interpreted. It keeps its own small radius of care, and within that radius the night becomes softer, steadier, and easier to remain inside. A little farther on, the inner court opens under a high window where night air and fine dust remain suspended together. One warm side light stays near the edge, while the center keeps its cooler hush. The opening above, the stone below, and the slow dust in between are enough. Nothing dramatic happens in the court. It only holds a little height, a little stillness, and a little more room between thoughts. The change in air should feel like release, rather than interruption. After the smaller rooms, the court does not wake the mind. It only lets the same night widen for a moment before narrowing softly again. The extra space is restful, because it still belongs to the same hush. The stair toward the upper stacks rises in a controlled way, touched by one wall lamp and a darker quiet above. Even the upward movement feels inward rather than alert. The steps, the rail, and the fading light keep the climb simple. The night does not sharpen here. It only thins into a quieter layer. Even this upward turn remains gentle enough to keep the drift unbroken. At the catalog niche, tablets, tags, and baskets remain ordered on a low shelf under a single lamp. The scene is modest enough to almost disappear into its own stillness. The shelf, the tied bundle, and the soft outline of a tablet do most of the work. Record keeping belongs to the same night as everything else now. Finished, quiet, and gently at rest. Nothing here needs to become more informative than it already is. The niche is calm precisely because its order has stopped asking for action. It can simply remain useful in silence. Its silence feels practiced, as though it has rested this way many nights. In the jar room, dry surfaces and sand underfoot make the darkness feel warmer and more enclosed. One doorway light reaches in, but only a little. The jars, the floor, and the deep back wall slow the scene naturally. The room does not need many details. Its weight is already enough to keep the narration low and unhurried. That restraint keeps the room warm, slow, and undisturbed. Outside the main room, a simple bench waits where work once paused and did not need to return. A small lamp beyond it leaves the bench mostly in shadow. The bench, a folded cloth, and the quiet wall beside it make the pause feel bodily and human without bringing anyone fully into view. By now, the episode should feel less arranged and more continuously lived in. This is where the night becomes especially easy to trust. Nothing is being presented for effect. The scene is only being left as it is, and that honesty gives the voice permission to soften still further. The bench asks almost nothing, and that is part of its kindness. Higher up, the roof vent lets a slow current of night air move through the upper dark. One distant warmth remains below, while the opening itself keeps the cooler traces. The vent, a beam, and a hanging edge of cloth are enough. The space widens, but the voice should stay soft and close. The night is not opening outward. It is only breathing a little more freely. The voice can loosen with it and still remain close to the room. In a deeper corner, sealed chests and tied bundles rest under dust-soft darkness. The light only brushes a few edges before falling away. Wood, cloth, and the faint line of a seal hold the scene in place. Nothing in the corner asks to be unlocked or explained. It is enough that the room keeps its quiet weight. Nothing needs to emerge from the corner for the scene to feel complete. Near the threshold again, the front lamp has burned lower and steadier, with more dark around it now than before. The building feels nearer to sleep than to watchfulness. The bowl, the wick, and the large still surfaces around them let the scene fade without becoming empty. The night has not changed direction. It has only softened. Returning to the threshold should feel like coming back to a quieter version of the same beginning. The room has not closed. It has only grown dimmer, slower, and more willing to let the voice disappear into it. By now, the night feels complete enough to continue without explanation. Further close, the shelves recede into a dark horizon where rose, dust, and one last practical light remain barely separate from one another. The room is still readable, but only just. The shelves, the haze, and the small remaining light stay in relation for a little while longer. Nothing else needs to arrive. The episode ends by continuing softly, as if the library will keep holding the night after the voice is gone. That final continuation matters more than any closing statement. The best ending here is not a conclusion, but a gentle release into the sense that the room will remain steady on its own and that the night can keep going without us.